Hello and welcome back to the Ad Race podcast. I'm Fayola Douglas and I'm joined by Tiwalola Adebayo, a globally recognised coach specialising in positive psychology. She's an international speaker, author and founder of Confident and Killing It. Confident and Killing It is a purpose-driven organisation and community that wakes women up to their worth so they can be confident, unstoppable and dare to live the life they truly deserve. Since starting in 2018, she's upskilled over 10,000 people across the world, delivering engaging experiences for brands and organisations such as Google, Canva, Meta, The Times, Deloitte, Spotify, and many more. You've been very busy.
I have, but I'm grateful. So, yeah.
So I really want to go back to how you got started in such an interesting sector, and it would be great to begin by talking about your education. So I know you studied Spanish and business management at degree level. Like when choosing your degree, what really inspired you to go for those subjects, and did you know back then what you wanted to go on to do?
Yeah, no, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to run my own business one day because both my parents are entrepreneurs. So I always had that kind of like business mindset, entrepreneur kind of feel with me. I did Spanish, history, and economics at A levels. So I've always been a blend of creative and business minded. And so when I was going to university, I picked Spanish and management because the management side allowed me to hone in on like my sciencey, skills, like my business skills. I'm very organized. I'm very type A. So that was like an area for me to thrive. And then I'm also creative. I'm also adventurous. And so learning Spanish, I liked the idea of like traveling around South America, living in Spain for a year, just something that was different and adventurous. I really appreciated. So that's how I ended up doing Spanish and management at UCL.
Very nice. And I was going to ask how those subjects aligned with your wider interests. So did you end up going traveling and really utilising your Spanish as well?
Not so much, not so much, but I did live in Spain for a year.
Yeah.
And I had a great.
That's enough. That's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So I lived in Spain for a year, which was amazing. And whilst I was in Spain, I decided to do a fashion communications course. So I originally thought I was going to go into fashion after working at university. So whilst I was on my year abroad in Spain, I decided to do a fashion communications course for a whole year. And it was one of the best things I had ever done because, before that point, I never used to see myself as a creative. I always just thought I was more academic than creative. And it was because I grew up in a really creative family. So my mom is a fashion designer. My dad is also into fashion and manufacturing. My sister is a fashion designer. My brother is a music producer. My grandma was a fashion designer. So it's just like I came from a family where people were creative and they could draw, and then it was like, oh, what's Tiwa good at? Like school, I guess. So I kind of poured all my energy and time into school. And then when I was in Spain, I was like, you know what? I want to push myself outside of my comfort zone. I've been telling myself this story that I'm not creative. I really want to see if that's true or not, because the narrative I was telling myself that I'm not creative was not serving me in any way. And so when I did the fashion communications course, I learned about photography, videography. I learned how to make a magazine. I learned how to do campaign shoots for brands, and my project won the best project of the year, where I created my own brand and I did the creative direction, I did the photo shoots, I did everything, the whole portfolio. And that just really showed me that I do have an element of creativity in me. So kind of leaving university, I knew I wanted to do something creative, but then also something that would kind of challenge my strategic mind. Yeah. So I have a strategic mind and I have a creative mind, and the two need to work together.
So now knowing what you've gone on to do in the area that you work in, do you ever wish that you had gone another route? It sounds like you really explored a lot of things, but would there have been a clearer path to getting into like coaching and the space that you really own now?
Yeah, I mean, some people will do like a degree in psychology or something like that. So yes, that could have also been an option, but I don't have any regrets on studying Spanish and management. I used my in my management side of my degree, I learned about marketing, I learned about project management, so all of those skills I've used. I learned about leadership, I learned about communication, negotiation. So all of those things I use in my day to day running my own business. Do I regret studying Spanish, even though I don't do anything to do with Spanish? No, but I like the fact that I can speak another language. I like the fact that I could write a 10,000 word dissertation in another language, like that. Those things are pretty cool to me. So after university, I have gone on to do like life coaching training and positive psychology specialization. But if I could go back, if I had known I was going to be a life coach, then maybe I would have done more psychology and business instead of Spanish and business.
And it also sounds like you came from a really inspirational household. There were a lot of people working in like the creative sector and different fields. Were they always really encouraging of you, regardless of what direction you were going to take and what you were interested in doing?
Yeah, I'm so, so lucky. Like when I called my dad, and I told him that when I quit my first ever job, because my first ever job, I was working at a manufacturing company in Oxford, and I was like marketing plastic caps and plugs and PCB boards and like components that go into fridges and cars. Like so, so random. We can talk about that later.
Very niche.
Yeah, yeah. But when I quit that job to do a job that I was more aligned with, I told my dad, and sorry, when I quit one of my other jobs to run Confident and Killing It full time, I told my dad, and he was like, I'm so proud of you. That was the first thing he said. Now, that's not the typical response of an African, especially Nigerian dad, So because I come from a family of entrepreneurs, my uncles, my cousins were all entrepreneurs, it was very normal for me to take this path, and they were really, really encouraging. They're really, really encouraging about it. When I started running my own events, my parents encouraged me. They showed up to every single event. At my book launch, they were both there. Any workshop or talk that I did, if they were in the country, they were there, so even though I had to take that leap of faith to bet on myself and start my business, I definitely knew that I had a safety net of love and support from my parents, which was very helpful.
So you spent, I know during the first part of your career, you spent a few years at Girl Effect. Like, how did you find that time in your career? I feel like this came after working at the
Yeah,
manufacturing place in Oxford
it
during the
did.
gap. This was like, yeah, after that.
Yeah, so whilst I was working at the manufacturing company, I learned firsthand about how important it is to know what you're passionate about. And I was always a passionate person, but I thought my passion could be applied to anything. And that's not true. Passion is passion based on what sets your heart on fire. So I was like, I can do any job. It's fine. I'll be passionate. I can do any job. And I got to this job in Oxford, and I quickly realized, no, I can't do any job. I only want to do jobs that align with who I am and what I'm good at doing. And so this is what I teach people in coaching. You have to know your power circle. And your power circle is where your strengths, your passions, and your values align. And that is what makes you the most powerful version of yourself. That's your true alignment. That's where you're in flow state and the most unstoppable. So whilst I was at the job in Oxford, I wrote down my strengths, wrote down my passions. My passions were female empowerment, and my value was impact. I wanted to do work that impacted people's lives directly. And so I started to look for jobs in the sphere of female empowerment and impact. And then I came across Girl Effect. And so I applied, and it was a 3-month contract initially, but I was like, once they meet me.
You knew from doing the work yourself beforehand, before even applying for that, you knew that this was a place where you could really make a
Exactly.
difference.
Yes, 100%. So I ended up staying there for about 18 months, just under 2 years. And in that time, I worked across so many different projects. I had like two roles. I really immersed myself in social impact and using technology for good, using social media for good. And I've always been drawn to those things. And that's why I started my business, because it was like social media is often seen as a place where it's really negative and people bully each other and mean comments. But it was like social media itself is just a tool. And I want to be one of those people that use the tool for impact, for good. That's how Girl Effect came along, and it's all about using media and technology to empower teenage girls in developing countries. So that was super aligned to what I cared about. And then I had started Confident and Killing It around the same time. So whilst I was in my day job learning about media and technology and behavior change, I was literally living that out, building my own brand, which was Confident and Killing It.
How did you manage your time during that build phase? Obviously, working a full-time position where
Yeah.
you were really passionate about your role and you were giving it your all and like doing amazing work and being recognized for that, but then also setting aside that time to build up your own brand and your own thing on the outside as well. Like, how did you balance that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And one piece of advice I always give to people is, if you're going to have a side hustle and a full-time job, let there be synergy between the two things. Because when I was in my full-time job and I was learning about behavior change and impact in content and connection and community and all of these things and content strategies, I was taking that knowledge and pouring it into my side hustle as I was building my business. And when I would run focus groups to build my business, I would take that insight and pour it into my day job. So I was thriving in both because I was taking the synergies from both areas, taking the learnings from both areas and using it to help me grow in each of those areas. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, because I was so passionate about my day job, when I came home in the evening, I wasn't drained. I wasn't hating life. I was super fulfilled. And that's one thing a lot of people don't realize. If you are in a day job that drains you, there's two things that can happen. For majority of the people, you're going to feel drained when you get home. And what are you going to do? You're going to put on the TV and spend your whole evening, because you're just like, I feel so debilitated. I feel numb. There's no spark. And the easiest thing to do for just a bit of comfort for myself is just to put the TV on. Right? That takes you further away from your goals of starting and launching your own business. So when I came home, because I was so fulfilled and energized, I had the energy to then work from 6 till about 10 or 12 p.m. Right? So that helps. Now, there are some people who can be motivated by being in a space that they hate. Right? So if you hate your day job, that might motivate you to say, I've got to work hard enough to get out of here and start my own business. So for some people, it's okay. But majority of the people, if you are doing something that drains you, it's very unlikely you're going to have the energy and the drive to follow your side hustle. And then the last thing where I was able to do it was because I was living in alignment, right? I was doing a job and running a business that matched my strengths. I was passionate about the business I was building. It wasn't just about money. In fact, I was not making any money in the beginning. I was passionate about that, and the building the business aligned with my value system. So because I was living in alignment with my authentic self, I unlocked a certain amount of energy that the average person who's not living in alignment can't access. So in sports, you hear something like when people talk about your beast mode or your flow state, right? Or like mamba mode, right? That is when athletes get into like beast mode and they perform like they've never performed before. Okay, the reason they can do that is because they're in a state of flow. When you're in a state of flow, you lose track of time completely and you are in like deep thinking like deep alignment, and there's just synergy and flow. A lot of people don't live and work in a flow state. They're constantly fighting and exhausted and burnt out or procrastinating and da 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 da. So because I built a business that was in the intersection of my strengths, my passions, and my values, I can do more than the average person. I don't struggle with procrastination. I don't struggle with lack of focus, because as soon as I sit down to do the work, I'm in a state of flow. So I would go to work, I would leave work about 4:30, hop on a train in King's Cross, head to Manchester, speak to university students there, come back to London, head 1 hour back to Northwest London, sleep, wake up, go to work the next day. And this is in 2019, where we had 9 to 5s and we had to be in the office every single day, which a lot of people probably won't resonate with now. But it's like that was the time where we went into the office every single day, and I would spend my evenings traveling to different universities around the UK. I would spend my weekends traveling to different universities around the UK, and I would still have the energy to sleep and wake up and go to work the next day. So that's the super key thing if you want to make your side hustle and full-time job work.
It just sounds like you were doing that with a smile on your face, with so much fulfillment and happiness and enjoyment of what you were doing and what you were learning and the insights you were gaining. It wasn't a chore. It wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe this is in my diary. And we kind of we can often like drag our feet to these obligations we've made. And it feels like you were just in a different headspace. And so that's how you were able to achieve so much during that time.
Yeah, definitely. It goes back to that feeling of alignment. When I'm in alignment, I feel happy, I feel fulfilled, I feel motivated. And, a lot of people set goals and then wonder why they have no motivation. If you set goals you don't care about, you're not going to be motivated to fulfill them. I set goals that I care about, and it all starts with self-awareness. When you know who you are, you can pick a job, you can pick a career that aligns with your greatness, your natural greatness. A lot of people do jobs because that's what your parents said you should do, or that's what society says you should do, or that's where you think you can make the most money, but the job is not aligned with your strengths, your passions, or your values. And so when you're there, your energy levels are low, you're feeling a lot of resistance, and it just there's just not much you can do. You're not fulfilled. So my secret sauce is to do things that fulfill me, to do things that are in alignment with my values and my passions, because then I can show up with ease. And whenever I speak, whenever I run events, people are just like, Tiwa, your energy is so amazing. Like, when you speak to me, it's like, I've heard these things before, but there's a way you say it that's just different. And that's the case because I'm living in alignment. This is the true power of authenticity. When you are in alignment with your truest authentic self, it's so different. Your energy is so different because most people are not in alignment. So when they see somebody who's walking in their light, walking in their purpose, they're just like, wow, but I'm here to tell you that anyone can do this, right? I do this with all my coaching clients. It's the first thing we do in our coaching sessions. Anyone can unlock this greatness.
I definitely felt that from you when I met you. You seemed like you were living by this as well. And that's how everything was in alignment for you, is you were not just saying to people, oh, you should do this. You were like, this is how what you were living by and why it was working and why you were feeling so fulfilled.
Exactly. I never give people advice that I do not take myself or I haven't done myself. And that's why I even became a life coach, because I was actually insecure as a teenager and my mind was super negative and mean to me. And it wasn't until I started my confidence journey that I learned about self-awareness and growth mindset and, learning to articulate my strengths. And when I started to go on my confidence journey, I was like, this is too good to keep to myself. I need to share this with other people, And so I started sharing techniques that had worked for me. And I think a lot of people just share stuff because they think it sounds good, but I only share what I know has worked 100%. Right? So I started sharing techniques that had worked for me. And of course, everybody's life is different. Everyone's background is different. But at a fundamental level, our minds are all the same. Right? The way our brain works is all the same. The the sequence, the secret to building confidence is the same for everyone, regardless of where you've come from, what you look like, etc. So when I saw the strategy I used to unlock confidence in myself, I started teaching other women how to do it too. And then I was like, okay, let me train to become a life coach. So like, I'm not just giving people advice based on my own experience, but I have like proven tools backed by science. And then I realized like what I was teaching people was actually backed by science. I just didn't know it at the time. That's why it worked, you know? So it wasn't just something I made up that felt good. It worked on me because it was backed by science. I just didn't know how to articulate it. So doing my life coaching training really helped me like articulate the impact and the strategy, and then I was able to then help people properly.
Did you think specifically about how it could be a viable business for you to pursue this area and pursue confidence coaching? Was that something that you thought of when you started sharing content, or did that come later? Like, was it always an idea that it could grow to be a business?
So yes and no. So when I first started making content, I wasn't thinking about it could grow to become a business. It was just like I had a message in my heart that I really wanted to share with the world. And so I just grabbed my phone and I recorded a video of how important it is to love and believe in yourself. And I just put it out there. Right. But before I did, I was shaking. I was like, oh, this is so cringe. You know, like my mean girl in my head was telling me delete, delete, delete. But then I was like, the message in me is more important than the fear I feel. So I went ahead and I posted that video, and fear has not been an issue for me ever since that day, because now I always realize that what I have to bring to the world is so much bigger and so much more important than my own little insecurity. So when I first posted that video, it was just like, I have something encouraging to say and I want to share it with the world. And then the feedback I got from that was like, wow, this is amazing. Wow, this helped me so much. Thank you so much for sharing this. You're speaking to me in a way that no one's ever spoken to me before. And then I was like, oh, this is helping people. So then I was like, okay, if what I'm doing naturally is helping people, let me get a qualification to make sure that I'm helping them in the best way possible. And that's when the idea of becoming a life coach came in. And then I knew, once I did life coach training and learned about being a life coach, then I knew, okay, this can really be a business.
I think that's so I think it's just so important. Like, it seems like you just wanted to go about things in the right way, like not even knowing that you already were giving the best advice that was available, but you just wanted to make sure everything was really backed up. And I think that's something that we're seeing more now in social media, of people really wanting to connect with experts in the field and people that have put in the work so that they can talk not only from their own experience, but with the expertise that comes from the qualifications that you've done. And really, I guess now you also have like a catalogue of case studies and real people that you've worked with and helped, so you can just approach things in a different way than if it was just talking about the experiences that you've had in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you know that it was time to transition from having a side hustle to it being a business, and that you were ready to leave Girl Effect?
Yeah, so something really interesting started to happen to me. I started to get panic attacks, which I had never gotten before. So I would walk into the office and my chest would be filled with anxiety. It would be so tight. There was a point where I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had to run outside to get fresh air. And that had never happened to me before. So when that started to happen to me, I knew that it was a sign that my body was sending me a sign, right? Because anxiety isn't just going to come out of nowhere. My body was sending me a sign that this space is closing in. It's getting too small. And that's why I felt all of that tightness in my chest. And then at the same time, I had started getting small opportunities with universities who had a bit of budget to pay me. So I knew there was a viable plan, like it was a viable career, and I knew I was getting too small for the the environment that I was in. And I also looked at people like Oprah. She's been one of my amazing role models. And like, even in my bio, I'm like, if Oprah and Beyonce got together and had a baby, I would be the result of that combination. So I've always known that if I look at somebody like Oprah, she's built a whole media organization. She's built a whole, magazine, digital company, talk show. So looking at her, I knew that there was opportunity to do that. So that's kind of where I set my mind that I wanted to build a digital business. And so I started feeling tightness in my body, and I was like, you know what, even though I didn't have a business plan, I didn't have any clients lined up. The most I had ever gotten paid was £250 for a workshop, which in the grand scheme of things is very small because you can't live off that. So I just knew that I was being called to something bigger, and I had to accept that call. And for me, when life is calling you, you pick up the phone, okay? You don't ignore it, because the more you ignore it, the louder the sound becomes, okay? And the more I ignored the anxiety, the worse the anxiety became. So I got to a point where it was like, I had just run an amazing partner meeting. It went so well. You would think that I would be celebrating, I would be happy. I literally ran into the toilet and cried afterwards. And immediately I cried, I pulled up my phone and I called my manager and I resigned on the spot. So I was just like, yeah, if I'm crying after a meeting where I should be happy, like, read the signs, okay? The signs are right there. It's right there. So I was like, okay, before I could overthink anything, I just called my manager and I resigned. So that was in December of 2019. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself a break at Christmas. I was going back home to Nigeria for Christmas. So I was like, okay, let me go home and then I'll come back to the UK in January, and I will give myself 3 months. Okay. So up until March, I only had 3 months worth of savings, by the way. So I was like, I'll give myself 3 months with my 3 months of savings to build a sustainable business, meaning a business that can be generating income that I can live off. So I come back in January, I smash out my business plan, things are looking good, I'm getting bigger opportunities now. It was like the moment I let go of my full-time job, so many opportunities just started coming to me. And I also think that is divine timing, because for me, I'm a Christian, I'm a person of faith, and I feel like when you take that leap of faith to bet on yourself, you always get rewarded. You can never lose. And the more you lean into, what you feel like you're destined to do, that's when the doors open, because now you have capacity to do it all. If I was still in a full-time job, I wouldn't have been able to go to some of those opportunities, like speaking at Deloitte, speaking at the Wing, which was a women's members club. I wouldn't have been able to do all those things if I was still in a full-time job. So things started to kick off, and then the pandemic happened, and all my work out the window.
Because a lot of it was coaching and like
in
in-person experiences,
It
those
was
events.
all in person, So in-person events, in-person this, all my pipeline, everything, because the world just shut down. All businesses were afraid.
They just pulled funding, didn't they? They like pulled their budgets, their like HR budgets for these things.
Everyone ghosted me. Everyone who I had, I was talking to them, it was looking potential, like it was looking good, ghosted. And so there I was like, oh shit, like here I am. And then I was like, okay, Tiwa, is this the story you want for yourself? That the pandemic happened, you lost all your business income, and you lost all your potential clients, and you gave up? And I was like, no, that's not the story I want for myself. And then I said, what is the story you want for yourself? Because we all know what we don't want to happen, but we never sit down to think about what we do want to happen. We go into the future and we think of the worst possible outcome every single time. Why? Don't do that. So I went into my future and I said, I want Confident and Killing It to be a household name. I want to impact women all over the world. Whatever goes down must come back up, because I am unstoppable. And every day in the pandemic, when my inbox was dry, when nothing was happening, I said to myself, how can I create my own opportunities? If people have canceled my workshops, then I'm going to start my own workshops. And then I started my own workshops on Zoom. And before I know it, 500 women are joining my Zoom workshops every Sunday to just hear me speak and to hear me interview other women and just be surrounded by people who are positive and are bringing light, So,
especially during that time, I can imagine you were probably on the screen, you were probably maybe the only interaction some people were having that week, and not everybody has a close circle of family and friends that they were able to meet up with and speak to and be honest with in that way. So that was probably so helpful to so many people.
Exactly.
The other thing I was going to say is it also sounds like even in a time when you had a lot of people pulling out, and obviously during that time of the pandemic, you still were able to have such a big vision and big dreams for what you wanted to create. I feel like, myself very much included in this, sometimes I don't want to set such big goals because it seems too hard to achieve something like that. Like, how are you able to stay so highly motivated and have such big goals to work towards even when things didn't seem like they were going your way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the honest truth is, it's a choice you have to make every single day, right? For two reasons. What's your why? Why are you doing what you're doing, right? So for me, I was doing what I was doing because it literally hurts me to see women who are capable, who have potential, who have big dreams, but they're letting fear, insecurity, and a lack of confidence get in the way, right? So I had a pain point that motivated me. And so if I give up just because life gets tough, then there's so many women out there who are still going to be dealing with bad mental health, who are still going to be dealing with negative thoughts and low confidence. And I have a solution, but I'm giving up because it's hard? Like, no. So that's kind of, you have to know your why, you have to know your purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why is it important? Who are you helping? All the times I felt like giving up is because I've just focused on me and my life. But when you remember that there's people out there who need what you have, right? People out there who you are an answer to their prayer. And that has happened to me before. Somebody literally messaged me and was like, I prayed about something and I watched one of your videos, and your videos were literally gave me the encouragement I needed. And it was just like, you are literally the answer to someone's prayer, but you're giving up because it's hard. So for me, it was very much like, focus on your why, focus on the impact that you're making, and just know that the entrepreneurial journey in general is hard. You can't go into entrepreneurship thinking everything is going to work out for you exactly the way you want it. And I'm glad the pandemic happened when it happened, because that was a first-hand lesson in entrepreneurship is hard. You are on a roller coaster and it's going to be spinning you around. It's going to be taking you backwards. It's going to be taking you forwards. But at the end of the day, you got to keep moving forward. And that's the analogy I always use. Like, roller coasters might spin you around, you might go backwards, but at the end of the day, the roller coaster is still moving forward because the ride has to finish. So no matter how crazy the drop is, no matter how bumpy the roller coaster is, it has to finish. So that's how I've always seen life. Like, it's hard, but I can do hard things. Entrepreneurship is hard. And I thought that it gets easier. The more years you're in it, it gets easier. But also that is not necessarily the case, because who would have thought, like, in the pandemic, that's when my business actually blew up, because I was showing up when a lot of people weren't. People were in existential crisis. They needed a life coach. Then Black Lives Matter movement happened, and I was getting a lot of bookings in the corporate world. But then after the pandemic, it was like Black Lives Matter was no longer trending, and all of a sudden I'm not getting as booked as much as I used to. And for me, this was my first time in the industry in the UK. Like, remember, I came from an NGO, so I didn't know the corporate game. I didn't know, how they did things. only for me to find out that what I experienced during Black Lives Matter was not the norm, and that was the exception. I thought that was the norm. So I was like, oh gosh, this is year one, year two, I'm just going to
Yeah,
be
you were
doubling.
seeing the
You
trajectory
know,
in a
I just,
certain way.
yeah,
Yeah.
it literally went, it was just an upward projection. There were no dips, nothing, just straight upwards from here on.
Nice.
And then I had to remember, like, the economy works like this.
Mm.
You have a boom, you have a dip. You have a boom, you have a
Yeah.
dip. So I learned about that. I boomed in the pandemic, and then there was a heavy dip right after. And then you pick yourself up again. You re-strategize. You find new ways to be creative, to innovate, and that's the game. The game is the game. So you have to decide how long are you going to try and stay in the game for, because that is what success is. You don't have to be first. You just have to stay in the game, because enough players will give up. Enough players will be defeated and drop out, and you will be the last man standing type of thing.
So I know you've always been really good at producing content, and I guess you took things one step further, because in 2022 you released your book, Confident in Killing It, and it was published by HarperCollins. Can you
Yeah.
take us back to the start of that journey? Did you begin writing it in the pandemic, like around in that time? Like when did you get started on your book, and what motivated you to want to write a book?
Yeah, so I was actually very surprised when I got that email. I was just sitting in my bedroom and I see an email come in from HarperCollins like, are you interested in writing a book? I immediately just fell to the floor because what? Like, this is somebody who had just survived. I want to say end of 2020. Yeah, because it came out in 2022. I wrote it in 2021. So I got that email in 2020. Yeah. So I get this email like, are you interested in writing a book? And I'm like, me? A book? Like, I just started this. In my mind, people that had books were like old white men or older people who had more wisdom, and they had been in the game for ages, like the John Maxwells of the world, the Oprahs of the world. Like, those were the people that wrote books on personal development, not me. So that first, I had to like get to grips with the fact that I don't want to say worthy enough, because I'm always worthy, but just like I was intelligent enough to write a book, that kind of thing. So got that email, had the call with them, and you won't believe that like 4 other publishers also emailed me about writing a book. Like, completely unrelated, not knowing that they had all emailed me. Like, every 2 months, Penguin also emailed me, a couple of others. Like, every 2 months, I was just getting an email going, are you interested in writing a book? We think you could write a great book. And I was like, okay, it's a sign. Like, I know the signs when I see them.
So it's not only one person felt that, it seems like there was a whole wave
yeah.
of interest, and
Yeah.
that must have been so much more encouraging.
Yeah, it was so encouraging. I was like, okay, wow, I really have something here. But at the same time, I was so burnt out because because my business exploded and I was new. I just kept saying yes to every single opportunity. So at a point, I think I was coaching like 30 women one-to-one at the same time, plus doing my corporate workshops, plus creating content, plus doing a podcast, all at the same time. So by December of 2020, I was so burnt out. So I didn't start the process until January of 2021. And how that started was I did I did 2 sample chapters. I got a book agent. Funnily enough, a book agent sent me a DM on Instagram in December of 2020 going, have you thought of writing a book? I would love to represent you. So everything just came to me. The book deal, the publishers, the agent, everything came to me. And this is true manifestation, right? Even though I wasn't manifesting a book necessarily, because I was in a state of flow, because I was honoring my calling, opportunities that I never even expected started to show up for me. So I wrote two sample chapters, and then my agent sent it off to Penguin and HarperCollins, since they were the ones who kind of had emailed me first before he then wanted to send it out to other publishers. And after HarperCollins read it, they said, clear all her other appointments. We don't want her meeting with any other publishers. And they sent me a 6-figure book deal in the space of 4 days. Yeah. As a first time author, I had not published any book. They gave me a 2-book deal, right? 6-figure 2-book deal. And I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's like it's real now. It's happening.
It's real. Yeah, it's real now. And what I realized is all the years that I had been creating content and running workshops, I realized that, and doing coaching, I realized that I already had a framework for the book. Because the book was going to be confident and killing it, as you can see in the background. But yeah, the book was going to be confident and killing it. And so it was like, okay, they wanted me to write 66,000 words. So I was like, okay, if I do 10 chapters that are roughly 5,000 to 6,000 words each, that's a book. Okay, 10 chapters, I could do that. 10 steps to build confidence. Boom, I've done it. And then I was like, okay, I've already been coaching people on how to build confidence. So let me take my coaching program and all my content pieces and see how I can make that into a system for building confidence. And that became the book. So when it came to writing the book, I wrote it in about 4 months whilst I was still doing all the other things that I was doing. But if I say I sat down full time, only did book writing, I probably wrote the book in 2 weeks. Which again sounds crazy because how do you write 66,000 words, a whole book in 2 weeks? But again, I was in flow state. I can smash out 5,000 words in a day easily and I'm not tired. So that whole process was incredible. Just unlocking a new level of myself, a new version of myself that I didn't know existed so soon in becoming a full-time entrepreneur.
So I know that you're really focused on waking women up to their worth. Was that always something you had a focus on from the beginning, or were women just more receptive of your content and your messages and the things that you were saying? And so did it happen naturally, or was that a decision that you had when you first started getting into this field?
Yeah, it wasn't a decision I had when I very first started. So when I first started, I was just making videos for everybody online. But naturally, the people that gravitated the most towards me were young Black women, because I was 25 at the time I started making content. So that kind of, just knowing that there was a community, I was naturally building a community, but I never specifically said it was just for women. However, when I would go and run mixed workshops at universities, I noticed that the women always kept quiet and the men did most of the talking. Like the guys would take over the whole Q&A. They would be the only one asking me questions, and then all the girls would be quiet. And I'm like, when there's men in the room, the dynamic changes. And I didn't like that because I knew that the biggest issue was with women not feeling like they were good enough. So when I say I wake women up to their worth, it's because of that. Because I've asked women across the board, all ages, different countries, what are your biggest challenges? And the feeling of not being good enough was number one. So that is where the journey and the mission started, to wake women up to the worth that they already have inside of you. So if you feel like you're not good enough, it's not because you are actually not good enough. It's because you're not awake to the greatness inside of you. Because the woman I am today, the elements of who I am was always within me. But it took time and self-awareness to recognize who I was and then hone in on my gifts. So I wake women up to their worth. I don't give you worth, right? Because no one can give you your worth. Your worth is intrinsic. It's already there. But I help you recognize your worth and your value and your greatness so that when you go out into the world, you move with main character energy. You can speak up and be visible. And yeah, so in the beginning, I worked a lot with like helping young women own their worth and recognize their worth. But now I'm also moving into executive coaching for more senior women, helping them with personal branding, helping them with public speaking, helping them with just being visible and owning who they are, taking up space, because there's nothing worse than being a hidden high achiever. So many incredible women doing incredible things, but they don't want to be seen, they don't want to speak up. And so now I'm also working with female CEOs to help them with their public speaking, to help them build their confidence. So when they show up with, like they mean it, like they show up with an energy that matches their track record. You'll meet some incredible women with a huge track record, and when you see them, you're like, this CV doesn't match the energy I'm getting right now. So it's been an incredible journey, but so that's how I decided that I wanted to focus on women.
Is there a certain point that you see women coming to you to ask for that help and advice, like something that might change in their life or careers, or do they need to have an open mind to receiving the help? I guess people have to reach out to you in order to get the benefit.
I guess it depends. So what I've noticed is there's like 3 key areas or 3 key stages. So there are women who are lacking clarity. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they want. They don't know what direction their life should be going in. So they come to me looking for clarity. Then there's women who know what they want, but then are not feeling confident enough to take action. They have the vision, they have the dream, but fear and insecurity gets in the way. And so for those women, they come to me to help them build confidence and overcome fear and insecurities. And then there are the women who know who they are, know what they want, they're already taking action, but then they feel like they're stagnant in life. And then they come to me to help them create a growth plan for them to grow in their careers or their business through personal branding. So I would say those are the key kind of pain points that I see women often coming to coaching: when they're lacking clarity, when they need confidence, and then when they need to build credibility in their industry.
Do you have any advice for brands and agencies who are now really thinking about how to empower women in their workforce?
Wow. Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of people like the idea of giving women space to make decisions and to, take up space and to lead and to have diversity. But then when it comes down to it, they're not listened to, right? They like the idea, but when it comes to giving them the actual chance for them to implement their ideas, there's so much back and forth, and then the women feel depleted. So what I would say is, the first thing is, if you really want to empower people, give them space to make decisions. Women especially, give them space to make decisions and to run things. Even though it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. Yes, okay, it matters if it's like $1 million cost to the organization, but before anyone messes up something huge like that, there will be, there'll be levels to it. There'll be checks. So it's not like somebody's going to wake up and do something that's going to crash, the whole organization, right? So on the grand scheme of things, give people space to experiment, to try new things. That is how innovation happens. Another thing I would say is we need more safe spaces for women to come together and talk about their challenges, to come together and learn from each other, and just really network and be in community. Because especially if you work in a male-dominated industry or company, you might often feel alone. You might be the only woman, in your team, and you might just feel like it's so many against me, I just need to shrink. But when you hang around with other women, you get motivation, you get encouragement, the sharing of the stories, the sharing of experiences, right, actually motivates and encourages other people. So those are the 2 things I would say, like actually give people the agency to make decisions and try new things, and then let women have safe spaces where they can talk and they can learn from each other. And of course, pay women what they deserve to be paid.
So I know you have a podcast, you of course have your book and lots of useful social content. What do you have coming up next? Where are people able to connect with you and see your content?
Yes. So Across the usual places, so Instagram, Threads, TikTok, I'm on YouTube, so Tiwalola across all confident and killing it. Anyone you search, it will come up. So that's like the best way to connect with me. And in terms of what's next, that's a really good question. And I'm going to say nothing because I started a lot from the very beginning. I did coaching, I did corporate, I did my book, and I did my podcast. Most people who do stuff in personal development have one of those things. And then every 5 years, they maybe add another one. I started in my first year with all of those things. So right now, I'm not trying to do more. I'm trying to build systems and processes that allow me to increase my efficiency in what I'm already doing is what I would say. So I'm not, and this summer, so 2025 was my year of being bold. And I realized that boldness is not doing more. I thought it was about doing more. I thought I was playing small. I thought I needed to do more. But actually, being bold this year was walking away from the limelight, was walking away from, all the big fancy things that people expect from me. And it was just being in the systems and the processes, in the spreadsheets, and really just taking a step back to be like, am I building a business that can thrive without me? Am I building a business because if you have a business and if you walk away from the business, everything falls apart. That's not a business, right? So something that initially gave me wings to be my true authentic self was now becoming something that was taking me away from my authentic self because it was causing burnout. It was causing health issues. So I had to do a whole reset this year and really just rethink, how do I want to show up as an entrepreneur and focus on that. So that's going to be my goal towards the end of the year and next year. It's about creating sustainability and systems and operations that can function without me, rather than adding new fancy programs and things that people love to see. But at the end of the day, if it always has to do with me, it's not sustainable, and then I'm going to drop the ball eventually. And I don't want to do that. So I'm in my lock-in era, sustaining the business, building systems, building processes, and it's fun.
Brilliant. So exciting, and just such a inspirational woman that you are. It's been so great talking
Thank
to you,
you.
Tiwalola. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
joining me.
Fayola. Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure.